Morning, everybody.
Morning, Robert.
Glad to see everybody could be with us this morning. I know last Sunday we had a visitor and he gave a lesson on mothers, but I don't think there's enough appreciation or talks about the mothers, especially the ones in the church. So I'm going to give another lesson, so you'll hear two different deals of mothers, and then mine is the mothers of the Bible. There's all types of mother figures in the world. You don't have to give birth to someone to be a mother figure to them. Sometimes those that do give birth may not have been a good mother figure to their children. Thankful in this congregation we have godly women that are wonderful mother figures. So whether you have children or just a mother figure, we thank you for everything you do. Have you ever wondered when Mother's Day began in the United States? President Woodward Wilson signed a joint resolution in Congress on May the 9th, 1914, recommending that the federal government observe Mother's Day. By the next year, the President authorized and proclaimed an annual holiday for Mother's Day. Through this special one-time event each year. But I think, and I know, that we should honor our mothers every single day for what we have put them through, or I have put them through. But before I give this lesson, I'd like to share a poem about a mother. Remember, this could be about a birth mother or a special aunt or even a special sister in Christ. The poem is A Mother's Love by Helen Rice. A mother's love is something that no one can explain. It is made of a deep devotion and a sacrifice of pain. It is endless and unselfish and enduring, come what may. For nothing can destroy it or take that love away. It is patient and forgiving when all others forsaken. And it never fails or falters, even though her heart is breaking. It believes beyond believing when the world around condemns. It glows with all the beauty of the rarest, brightest gem. It is the far beyond defined. It defies all expectation. And it still remains a secret like the mystery of creation. And many spindrift miracles man cannot, I can't say that word, but miracles man cannot understand. And in other words, evidence of God's tender hand. The Bible tells us many places that a mother is to be honored. In fact, it is in the 5th commandment, in the 10 commandments, is found. Let's read Exodus 20:12. Honor thy mother and thy father. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. And also, it is over in the New Testament, in Ephesians 6:1-3. Children, obey thy parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, thou mayest live long on the earth. So you can see our mothers are to be respected and honored. And not just on Mother's Day, but every day. And after a prayer and song, we'll go on through this lesson. The first mother we'll talk about in the Bible is Sarah, Abraham's wife. The wife, an impatient mother. God had made a promise to Abraham that he would that his descendant would be numerous than the stars. No doubt Sarah was aware of this. But much time had gone by, and she had not yet received or conceived. She apparently thought that she was never going to conceive, but she was not going to let her infirmity stop her from providing Abraham children. Let's go to Genesis 16, 1 through 4. Genesis 16, 1 through 4. Now Sarah, Abraham's wife, bare him no children. She had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarah said unto Abraham, Behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray that ye go into my maid, and may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abraham hearkened to her voice to Sarah. And Sarah, Abraham's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, and after Abraham had dwelled 10 years in the land of Canaan, he gave her to her husband Abraham to be his wife. And he went into Hagar, and she conceived, and when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised by her eyes. In this here we find, or we learn, that Sarah takes matter into her own hands and try to work at hand in works. She gave her maid servant to Abraham, and she was able to bear a son for Abraham. Some might say she accomplished her goal. However, this was not God's plan. Sarah took matter into her own hands and tried to take them out of God's hands. A lot of people like Sarah is in this, or like this, or this way. When they don't get the results, that they want, from God in a timely manner. What do we do when we don't receive this, and when we think we need to receive it in a timely manner, or it ain't fast enough for us? We take that matter in our own hands, like Sarah did. And most of the time when we do this, the results does not come out like we want it to. That's what happened to Sarah when Hagar born a child for Abraham. Apparently, Hagar dishonored Sarah because she could not conceive. Perhaps it was making mean comments to her. probably saying, wish you could produce a child like I can. Because Sarah dealt with her maid harshly, and Sarah was very unhappy about the whole mess. I'm sure Sarah wished she had never taken matters into her own hands. She should have just waited on the Lord and trusted in Him. We have all felt like Sarah because we have taken matters into our own hands. And then after that, what we ever did, it was not the way we figured the outcome would be. And we asked our question, well, why? Well, why did they do that? Now after Sarah was way past in age to conceive a child, God let Abraham know that Sarah was going to bear a child. And we can find in Genesis 17 through 21. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said in his heart, shall a child be born unto him that is hundreds of old, and shall Sarah that is 90 years of old bear? And Abraham said unto God, O thy Ishmael might live before thee. And God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah has borne unto thee at this said time in the next year. As we read there, even Abraham was amazed at what the Lord was telling him. This just goes to show you that with God, all things are possible. So a great lesson we can learn from Sarah is not to take matters into our own hands, but to be patient. Put our trust in God, in God's timing. If you haven't become a mother yet, it doesn't mean that you won't or won't be a mother figure to someone someday. Even before her conceived, Sarah could have been an excellent mother figure to those around her. The next mother we're going to talk about is Hannah. This story here we can find in 1 Samuel chapter 1 through 7. First Samuel chapter 1, verses 1 through 7. Now there was a certain man in Ramoth of the Mount Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Zebul, and Etherites. People can probably say the names better than I can. And he had two wives. The name of the one was Hannah, and the other was Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. And this man went up out of his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. And the two sons of Ehud and Eber, the prince of the Lord, were there. And when the time was that Elkanah offered, he gave to Peninnah his wife and to all her sons and her daughters portions. But unto Hannah he gave worthy of portions, for he loved Hannah, but God had shut her up her womb. And her advisor also provoked her sores, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. And as he did so years by year, when she went up to the house of the Lord, she provoked her, therefore she wept and did not eat. Here we learn that a man by the name of Elkanah had two wives, Peninnah and Hannah. Peninnah was able to have children, but Hannah could not. When they would once a year go to worship God and make sacrifice, Elkanah would make an offering to give a portion to Peninnah and her children, but he would give the double the portion to Hannah, because he loved her so much, even though she had not borne a child. For him. This was troubling to Hannah, and all she wanted to do was to be a mother, and certainly didn't help that Peninnah gave her a hard time about having any children. In the same chapter there, reading on from 8 to 11. Then said Elkanah her husband to her, Hannah, why weepest thou, and why eatest thou not, and why is thy heart grieving? Am I not better to thee than 10 sons? So Hannah rose up after that they had eaten in Stilwell, and after they had drunk. Now Eli the priest sat upon the seat by the post of the temple of the Lord. And she was in bitterness of soul, and prayed unto the Lord, and wept sore. And she vowed a vow, and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look on the afflictions of thy handmaid, and remember me, and not forget thy handmaid, but wilt give unto thy handmaid a man child, then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come on his head. You can see here that Hannah was getting very depressed. She was praying to God from her heart with her eyes full of tears. She poured her soul out to the Lord and asked him to allow her to have a son, and that she would give him to the Lord all the days of his life. She had put her trust in the Lord, and the Lord heard her prayer and answered, and she born a son. She even named him the appropriate name, because Samuel means ask him of the Lord. Now she stayed at home with Samuel until he was weaned. Then she took to the priest and let him forever serve the Lord. When you read in 1 Samuel 24, chapter 1, 24 through 28. And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her with the 3 bullocks and 1 ephah of flour and a bottle of wine, and brought him into the house of the Lord in Shiloh. And the child was young. And they slew the bullocks and brought the child to Eli. And she said, O my Lord, as thy soul liveth, my Lord, I am the woman that stood by thee and here and prayed unto the Lord. For this child I prayed, and the Lord hath given me my pension which I asked of him. Therefore I also have lent him to the Lord. As long as he liveth, he shall be lent to the Lord. And he worshiped the Lord there. Not only did Hannah do the right thing by trusting in God and His timing, she also kept her promise to the Lord about giving her son over to Him. Hannah was faithful and a wonderful mother. And we learn, as you study and learn, God blessed her with even more children. In 2 Samuel 2:20 and 21. And Eli blessed Heber and his wife and said, The Lord give thee seed of this woman for the loan which is lent to the Lord. And they went unto their own home. And the Lord blessed Hannah, so that she conceived and bare 3 sons and 2 daughters. And the child Samuel grew before the Lord. The next mother we're going to talk about is Jochebed, Moses' mother. She is a real good example of what a mother is willing to do to save her child. And we go to Exodus 2. Exodus 2, 1 through 10. And there went a man of the house of Levi, and took up the wife of the daughter of Levi. And the woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw him, that she was a godly child, was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. And when she could not longer hide him, she took forth him an ark of a bushel, and dotted it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein. And she laid it in the flags up by the river brink. And her sister and his sister stood afar off to wit what would be done to him. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by the riverside. And then she saw the ark among the flags. She sent her maid to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. And she had compassion on him, and said, This is one of the Hebrews' children. Then said his sister to Pharaoh, and then said the sister to Pharaoh's daughter, Shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew woman, that she might nurse the child for thee? The Pharaoh's daughter said, Go to her. Go. And the maid went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, Take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. And the child grew, and she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses. And she said, Because I drew thee out of the water. Moses' mother loved him dearly. She was not about to have him thrown into the river because of the Pharaoh's command. Now we read the story. We can read the story, what happened. It is easy to see that Jacob was taking a big risk by putting her son on the river, allowing the Pharaoh's daughters to see him. She could have easily ordered the servants to drown the baby, Moses. But then the Pharaoh's daughter saw the baby cry. Her heart melted. I think it's a common response for just about any woman to want to seem to nurture a child that is crying and trying to comfort that child. But what I really like about this story is Jacob had the opportunity to teach Moses about God and the children of Israel until he was weaned. She gave him, I believe that was a real big influence that a mother has upon him to find one of his own Hebrew people. You remember, if you can study and remember where his mother had raised him, and then when one of the Egyptians was thrashing and whooping up on one of the Hebrews, he had struck the Egyptian and killed him. And as you go on and read, you find that Moses is a very godly man who led the children of Israel out of Egypt bondage. All the mothers and fathers alike can learn a great lesson from Jacob. It is very important that we teach our children about God early on. What we teach them now will stick with them for the rest of their lives and will influence on how they live their lives in the future. We must understand that Christian parents and grandparents, that our children and our grandchildren look at us for examples. So you can see there is a great need for us to live a righteous life. If you're going to teach someone or do something, you must set an example. This principle doesn't just apply to parents or grandparents, it applies to all the Christians in every situation. I know there's some out there that go to church, but they sure act like the world instead of being the light. You know, if your friends or co-workers know that you're a faithful Christian, and when they catch you doing something that is not in a Christian manner, then they can see that, and then they say, example, being in that sense very much. You're a Christian, why'd you do that? Why'd you say that? That's how we lose. I know I've seen many that I used to work at, talk to, and get their trust, and all of a sudden somebody else from a different religion say they're a Christian, and they go and do this and do that. You lose them. It's hard to get them to come back and trust you. One last thought on this. I state that we needed to start teaching our children at a very early age. But I want you to know that it doesn't matter how old your children are. You should never give up on them. Take every opportunity you can teach them more about God, because you never know what might influence you may still have on them. So we should never give up. The next mother I want to talk about is Naomi. A mother that showed great love to someone she did not give birth to. Her daughter-in-law. Naomi was married and had 2 sons who married 2 women from Moab. Naomi was no doubt a very loving mother, but the unthankful happened and her husband died. Then 10 years later, both of her sons died. Parents never want to live longer than their children. It's hard. But Naomi decided to go back to Judah, where she was from, and her daughter-in-laws wanted to go with her. Again, this tells us what kind of loving woman this was, that these ladies wanted to stay with her. She tried to talk to them into going back to the mothers and leaving her. One of these listened, but Ruth did not. Let's go to Ruth chapter 1, verse 16 and 17. Ruth chapter 1, verse 16 and 17. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee, for whither thou goest I will go, and whether thou lodgest I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest I will die, and where will I be buried, thee, Lord, so do me. And more also I ought, but dead part thee and me. This right here shows how Naomi was a very good mother and a mother-in-law. She treated her daughter-in-law as her own. When they arrived, we see where Ruth goes into the fields to gather up heads of grain. But the field she goes to belongs to Boaz, who was a relative to Naomi. And Ruth catches the eye of Boaz, and he wants her to continue to gather food from his field and to hang around his maids, servants. And she does this. When Naomi hears about this, she gets excited for her daughter-in-law, and she said, and gives her good advice on how to be pleasing to Boaz and to gain favor to his side. And if you study on, sure enough, Naomi's advice pays off, and Boaz and Ruth become married and have a child named Obed, who would become David's grandfather. Naomi once again had the opportunity to hold a child in her hand And no doubt, as a grandmother, she helped and take care and loved this grandchild very much, even though Ruth did not give birth to Naomi. She was a daughter to her. She can safely assume that Naomi would have learned a great deal from being a good mother from Ruth. This is just another wonderful example of what mothers can do. We have looked at several mother figures this morning and their characteristics. We have learned how important mothers are and how they should be honored. We have to also learn that we must be patient. We must trust in the Lord in His timing, and there is a great need for us to teach our children and our grandchildren about God and how to become an example for them. And we must become an example for them and those out in the world. As we grow in our Christianity, I hope we will strive to do these things. If we're not a child of God, there are steps we must take. We must hear the Word. We must have faith. We must repent. We must confess Christ before men. And we must be baptized and buried in the water. If you're already a child of God and you need to begin again, or you can repent of what you are doing and ask God for forgiveness and begin your life again for Him. If anyone would like the prayers of the church for any reason, or to become a child of God, please come forward as the song has been selected.
Page 2.
I thank you for your attention. Like I said, we need to honor our mothers, our grandmothers, our mothers to be on a daily basis. I know I gave my mom a lot of heck when I was growing up. But those that have fallen away, we need to also keep their prayers and convince them to come back. I know we don't get to see them often, but when we do, we need to offer them to come back and study with us. Thank you.